It's meant to be exclusive, and by including men, you're excluding women. Because I did get that when I first conceded. I had a couple of women cry to me and say, I felt like I hadn't been able to talk about this, even at home, to my husband or my family, because it's such a subject that no one wants to talk about.
Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. So here we have a story that explains why women are so adamant about maintaining our own categories, instead of making them open to everybody. We had two transgender athletes in a women's pool final. And I don't want to hear anything about, oh, it's only pool, there's no advantages, when actually there's some information that I read that says there are advantages even for pool. And pool is considered a sport. So I don't want to hear anything about it's just pool. This is an example of women being erased from their own final. And yes, there are open categories, there are co-ed categories, there are men's categories. There are many options that these transgender athletes have. But it's the women's category that is suffering. And now we have two male pool players going head to head in a women's competition. That means that the female pool players have been pushed aside. And my question is, if there were no advantages, how comes there happens to be two male players in the finals? Because that's what we see in sports where there are advantages. The male athlete gets to the finals, the male athlete wins. Here we have two, and both of them are in the finals. Coincidence? So we know that arm reach, I'm not an expert obviously, but we know that arm reach, the size of one's hands, all of that can be a factor. This is the future of women's sports. This is the future when we allow somebody to enter into our category simply based on identity. Why did they not get to the finals or advance this far when playing against other male pool players? That is the question. So professional women's pool tournament has been hit by protests after the final was contested by two transgender players. So people are protesting right now over this because this is absolutely insane. This is a mockery of women's sports. This has drawn protesters. Women have walked away from these competitions in protest of this. And now they're allowing these athletes to dominate the women's category. So Harriet Haynes and Lucy Smith faced off in the Ultimate Pool Women's Pro Series Event 2 at Robin Park Leisure Centre in Wigan on Sunday, having each beaten 4 female-born opponents. Having each beaten 4 women. Broadcaster Piers Morgan labelled the event preposterous before accusing the sport of cheating bulls on social media. Former Olympic swimmer Sharon Davies called it bloody ridiculous and grossly wrong in every way. Inside the venue, there were shouts from protesters, people saying, "Here's a man, and we stand with Lynn Pinches." People held up banners saying, "Save women's sports," and "Here's a man," as Hayes walked past. And those are facts. Some might say that's not very nice or whatever, but these are facts. Not very nice to erase women from their own competition either, is it? So one person who's very vocal about this, and she has called out this particular story, is Lucy Zellick, an Australian journalist or radio host. And she broke down some information about these two male pool players. She said the rules of both the English Pool Association and World 8-Ball Pool Federation, WEPF, state that trans-identified athletes are allowed to compete in the sport with absolutely no restrictions, according to their website. In one of her posts, she pointed out that the pair have won roughly 75% of their matches. So Harriet Haynes won the World's Masters European Championships and UK national singles titles in the ladies category in 2024. So the Australian journalist pointed out that they have defeated 4 biologically female opponents, each to get to the championship match. Before the final, Smith had won 85 of 113 matches and 62% of frames since 2021. Hayes entered with a 75% match win rate and had claimed 61% of frames across 241 games. The pair met in the UK mini-series semi-finals in October, where Hayes defeated Smith. However, Hayes went on to lose the final to a biological woman, Okay?
You can win the lad. Yes, man.
So Lynn Pinches actually turned down a professional pool contract in the UK due to her opposition to competing against transgender women in female categories. In 2023, the Women's Champion of Champions tournament, she forfeited the final match against transgender player Harriet Haynes, citing concerns over fairness. So this female pool player has turned down opportunities, has turned down money, has lost money, prize money, walked away from matches, forfeited matches.
But like, it's not about money or winning or anything like that, because no England spot that I might have just turned down on a trial, and no pro spot that I've turned down is worth what this fight is worth to me.
All because of policies that allow male players to enter into her category, because they've essentially made the female category open. So Lynn Pinches herself actually offered some insight into how male players have an advantage over female pool players. She said from her own experiments, men can hit a pool ball at up to 42 kilometers per hour, while for women, the maximum is 31 kilometers per hour. So the WEPF and the Ultimate Pool Group, UPG, they did initially ban transgender athletes competing in the women's category in 2023, restricting entry to those who were born female. But after legal pressure, including from Haynes, they reversed the policy, allowing transgender and non-binary athletes to compete if they meet criteria like a 4-year female identity and reduced testosterone levels. What? As of 2025, both organisations continue to review their policies. Hayes says that there's no advantage, saying the evidence that we've received from our expert witnesses shows that I have no advantages. They've shown that pool isn't a gender-affected sport. Like I always say, at some point, we need to move away from the debate about advantages. It's a fact that male athletes have advantages over female athletes, even for sports like pool and darts. But whether there are advantages or not having an advantage doesn't make you female. Women deserve their own categories. So even for darts, even for pool, the integrity of the women's category needs to be maintained. It's not right that a category that female athletes fought for should now be taken away because some entitled male athletes want to identify as a woman and we're supposed to just accept them as women. Even when there is no advantage, male athletes do not belong in women's categories. They can compete in the open categories, in the co-ed categories. They have options, and they should not be infringing upon the women's category. When it comes to certain studies can be sponsored by particular interest groups and lean towards a particular finding that's favourable towards their agenda. I mean, that's what we saw when there was a study that said that it was commissioned by the Olympic Committee. The study said that transgender athletes actually have a disadvantage. So when it's possible for those sort of findings to be issued and the people behind it to keep a straight face, we know that studies can be manipulated. We know that studies can be biased. So I'm not convinced. Because it's a fact that male athletes do have an advantage over women. And it doesn't have to be the most physical, demanding sport for them to have an advantage. Even having bigger hands, longer arms can afford them an advantage over their female opponents. When did we get to the point where we're taking away women's categories? even in chess. I don't care. If it's a woman's category, then it should be for females only. It's not unreasonable to expect a woman's category to be strictly for women, to be strictly for females. That is not unreasonable. Otherwise, we're going to see a spectacle like what we're seeing now in women's pool. Sorry, but in my opinion, this is a spectacle, and this is a mockery of women's sports, a mockery of women's categories. When we allow male athletes into women's competitions, they go on to dominate. They go on to erase women competitors. They literally go on to replace women. And the images coming from the women's pool final recently is an example of that happening right under our noses. This signifies where women's sports is heading when we open up the women's category based on identity instead of biological sex. So let me know what you think. Thanks for watching. Like, comment and subscribe. Take care of yourselves, and God willing, I will see you in the next video.